Are you using the right tools in your disciple making? Hi, I'm Darren Wright from 12 Church, and one of our discoveries over this past year has been Discovery Bible Studies. Discovery Bible Studies are being used everywhere, all around the world, different cultures, different contexts, both to disciple people, but also to reach people, which again is both sides of disciple making, reaching and discipling, growing people up, bringing them to the place where they can make other disciples. Discovery Bible Studies are a key aspect, a key tool in doing this. So what I'd like to do for this video is really walk you through how to do a Discovery Bible Study. There will be a link to the document I'm referencing that you can download, and you can use this video to train yourself and possibly even train others in doing Discovery Bible Studies. I'm going to start by walking through general guidelines for doing Discovery Studies, and then I'll walk you through exactly how to do a study step by step. Discovery Bible Study can be a part of a larger meeting, as we do in 12 Church. It's a key part of our meeting, but it's not the whole meeting, or it can be an entire meeting in itself. Basically, in a Discovery Bible Study, you're looking back to report on what you've applied from the last study. You're looking up to see what God is saying in His Word today, and you're looking ahead to how you'll obey what God has revealed through the study. Really what you're doing is you're hearing from God together and engaging in mutual accountability and encouragement to apply what the Word says. Disciple making includes teaching people to obey, and so Discovery Bible Studies are about teaching people to obey what God says through His Word. Here are some general guidelines for people in the group to follow in a Discovery Bible Study. Share in sentences, not lengthy paragraphs. In other words, just respond to the questions as they're asked. Don't get, too carried away too long. It's really about participation, give and take, conversational interaction around the Word. Focus on what the passage is saying, not on other passages or things you've heard somewhere else. This is really difficult for church people to do because we always want to refer to some sermon we heard somewhere, to some illustration or some historical background, archaeological discovery we've heard. Occasionally, we may allow people to reference another scripture, but we want to focus in on the passage at hand. Why? Because when you're doing Discovery Bible Studies with seekers, you want everybody to have everything they need. And if you keep referencing other stuff, you're not equipping people to interact with the Word. You're not training those seekers or those new believers in how to lead or facilitate discovery studies. You want to teach people to interact with the Word that is in front of them. And again, from time to time, you might say, okay, here's another passage that informs this, but be very careful about going down rabbit trails. Focus on what this particular group is seeing. Don't reference other studies you've done, even on the same passage. Focus on what is coming to the mind in the group that you're working with. When you ask questions, give a little time to respond. It's okay to have a little bit of silence from time to time. Now, there is both an art and a spirit-directed aspect to this. This is probably the hardest part of facilitating a study, just knowing how long to wait. I tend to move pretty quickly right out of the gate so people know if they want to answer, they have to do it fast. But when it comes to application or more difficult kind of questions, I'm more inclined to give some time, to give some silence, to let people wrestle things through. The person who is facilitating the discovery study is a facilitator, not a teacher. This is very important. We're basically taking the Word, asking questions about it, and discovering what the Word says. And so the facilitator just kind of quarterbacks the process. Here are some guidelines specific for the facilitator. Keep to whatever the agreed upon timeline is. Usually it takes maybe 30 to 45 minutes to do a discovery study. I would say if you set 30 minutes, you can do a discovery study in 30 minutes. And you don't have to get through every little aspect of the study, every question, but you want to do every stage of the study so you get to the place of application. The way you prepare for a discovery study is you read the passage ahead of time. You answer the questions in your own mind. You think maybe of illustrations or stories from your life that interface with the passage that you can share in those silent moments, but you just basically immerse in the passage and ask for the Lord's direction in facilitating the study. When people ask a question outside of the core questions, if they ask a question about the passage or some doctrinal issue that comes up, ask the group, what does this passage say? And if the passage doesn't answer the question, and it's a core question, an important question, you don't need to answer right then, but you do need to say, we will do some research and get back to you at our next study. You might want to assign someone to do some research, or you might bump to a passage outside the study at that moment to answer that question specifically. But again, guard against the rabbit trails. If people ask odd questions or make unusual comments or really get into things that aren't in the passage, just bring them back to the passage and say, how does that show up in that passage? Or where do you get that idea? All right, let's walk through the outline of how you actually do a discovery Bible study. I've divided it up into three kind of aspects. There is the connection or icebreaker time, there's the study time, and there's the application action time. So to start the study or start the group meeting, you have some kind of icebreaker question. I like the HLB, high, low, buffalo question, where you ask, what's a highlight of your week or a low point of your week, or what's the buffalo of your week? Something that is odd, that is unusual, that just kind of made this week or some incident unique, and give people a chance to share. You can come up with other kinds of sharing questions. You can do highlights, hotspots, whatever you like. The intent of this is to kind of get people sharing and talking, but also find out where people are at. What's going on in their hearts? What's going on in their minds? Make sure we're actually in touch with each other. In our 12 church group, which includes a discovery study, but is larger than that, it includes evangelism training, we will also report on any personal evangelistic activity we've had, people we've met and prayed with and talked with. And of course, an important part of this introduction portion is sharing the results of your application from the previous study. What did you do with your application commitment? Are you actually following through? And it can be important, I'll just mention this now, to give people 3x5 cards to write down their application at the end of the study, or some groups actually have a logbook where they write down everybody's applications and actions and then review them when they get back together. So you have this introduction kind of portion, getting in touch with each other, reporting back on evangelism or applications, and then you move into the study. Just as an aside, there are several helpful studies or passages you can start with. They're referred to as 10 stories of hope, stories from the life of Jesus. Jesus at Levi's, Nicodemus, the prodigal son. There's some key passages that really work well and really unpack who Jesus is and God's heart for people. And there will be a list of this as well in the notes. So you've got your passage. You get someone to read the passage. If it's a long one, you get several people to read the passage. Then you ask someone, or someone volunteers, you open it up to the group, for someone to tell the story back in their own words in as much detail as possible. And as they tell the story, you can have other people fill in the gaps and just make sure the story is retold in detail and doesn't include things that are not in the story, but it's an accurate retelling of the story. This is really important in some pioneering mission areas where people maybe can't read, so they hear the story and have to repeat it back. And this gives them a chance to really immerse in the scripture. Then you simply ask the question after the group has filled in all the details of the story, what stands out to you? And this is just kind of a gut reaction moment, just things that jump out at you. Don't go into any deep discussion on any of them. Just get people to share. It's an easy question. What jumps out to them? And then you ask the first discovery question. What does this passage say about God, Jesus, or his plan? What a great question. So people look at the passage looking for theology. What does this tell us about God? What does it tell us about Jesus? What does it tell us about God's plan and the way he works in the world? And so many passages, people will make great discoveries along those lines. The next question is kind of a fun one, also a great question. What does this passage tell us about us? What does it tell us about people, about what people are like? And you might discover that people in this passage, it says people are, without God, they're lost, or people are kind of judgmental, or people are, very diverse in their views. And it's just really, it gives people a chance to share even about themselves in relation to the story and make observations about people. Then you ask, based on what's in this passage, what is there in this passage that encourages me that I'm on track or challenges me to change something in my life? You can maybe ask that as two separate questions. What about this passage encourages you personally, affirms you? What challenges you and calls you to change? This is starting to get a little bit deeper. And then you move from there. It's really a subtle move. It's just a deepening of the study where you ask the question, what specifically will I do as a result of the truths in this passage? It's called an I will statement, where people write out, I will blank. And it's got to be, like SMART goals, specific and measurable and achievable. It's got to be something concrete that you'll know whether you've done it or not. And this can be hard for people to do, and this can be hard for church people to do, because we've in many ways been trained not to apply Scripture. We've been trained to hear it, to enjoy it, to learn some stuff, but we're not always being called to apply it, which when you look at the Great Commission, that's why that phrase, teaching them to obey, is often referred to as the Great Omission. It's something we miss a lot in our, quote, disciple making. But if we're not teaching people to obey, we're not actually making disciples. So this I will statement is really the difference between, a warm, fuzzy Bible study and a disciple making study. And then a next level kind of application question: is there someone who I should share this story or my learnings from this story with in the week ahead? This might be a person who doesn't know the Lord. It might be someone that you're discipling, but who do you need to share with about this story this week? And then, of course, a reminder to come back and report back on the I wills in the following study. And typically, in any group setting, you would share personal prayer requests for people that you're working with who need the Lord, and then, tie it off that way. So that's a discovery study. It can be an entire group meeting. It can be a portion of a meeting, but it's an incredibly effective tool when it comes to disciple making. If you found other related tools, let us know in the comments. If you want these notes, you can download them as well here. Wisdom to you. God bless as you seek to be a disciple who makes disciples.